Welcome to Subramani. One of the bigger impediments to retirement, and I would think the biggest impediment to retirement, is the size of the house that you buy. So if you are typically in Mumbai and you're young, maybe you're 31 years of age, and you want to buy a house, you have gone with your wife and finalized on a house which costs about, say, 75 lakhs, and it's a 1 BHK in a decent, half decent kind of a locality. You're not talking of prime Mumbai, you're talking of one of the suburbs of Mumbai, which is maybe 30-40 kilometers away from Mumbai. That's where you can buy a 1 BHK for 75 lakhs. So you have gone and bought that 75 lakh house, for which you have taken a 50 lakh rupee housing loan, which you were told would be about 40,000, 45,000 kind of an EMI. My numbers could be wrong because my numbers are perhaps a little dated. And that's a number that you finalized, and you came back and you and your wife decided that that is an EMI that you can afford, unmindful of the fact that currently you're paying about 7,500 rupees as rent in the same locality. So your EMI goes to 50,000 rupees approximately. It is about slightly less than that. But your rent that you were paying was only 7,500. So is there any great logic in shifting to a own house? Well, I think that we should talk about separately. Now here I am talking about how it is going to hurt your retirement corpus creation. So typically what happens is, when you want to buy a house at that age, you are buying your first house. So everybody around you, near you, above you, beside you, everybody wants to tell you that, look, you will never buy a house in India, in Bombay, more than once, so buy a bigger house. So if you need a 1 BHK, they'll push you a 2 BHK. If you have a 2 BHK, if you need a 2 BHK, they'll push you a 3, 4, 5 BHK, depending on whatever the builder wants to sell and what the lender wants to lend. So based on that, you will be sold the biggest possible house at that point in time, which your EMI can afford. It has nothing to do with your requirement. Suppose your parents are staying in Mumbai, and so are your parents, and your wife's parents are staying in Mumbai. Do you really need that extra bedroom that when your parents come, they will stay? They will not come and stay in your house, right? So you can buy a 2 BHK after you have a kid. No, but initially there is a push, and you will go and buy a 72 lakh rupee house. Fantastic. You took a 50 lakh loan, and you thought your EMI would be less than 50K, but you went and found out that for a 20-year loan, your EMI is approximately 52K. I am wrong because I am taking a higher interest rate, right? So I have taken about 10-11% kind of interest rate. I'll tell you why I am taking that. I'm taking that simply because people expect to get 11% return in appreciation of real estate, which doesn't happen. So if you reduce the appreciation to your expectation to 7% or 6% or 5%, your EMI interest rate will also be about 7% currently if you borrow, but my numbers are, as I said, a little dated. So when you went to collect your loan papers, you realized that your EMI was not under 50, it was about 52,000. So 52,000, you were wondering from where you will be able to make that payment, and you were discussing it with your wife, and you discussed it a little loud enough for the girl across the counter, that sweet little thing in HDFC Limited, to tell you, sir, it is possible that you can shift to a 30-year loan instead of a 20-year loan, and that will reduce your EMI by about 5,000-6,000 rupees, maybe 7,000 rupees. And you said, wow, that's great, so let's do it. So you did it, and your EMI came down to below 45,000, about 44,000 rupees. And you were thrilled. You said, wow, 8,000 rupees saved, fantastic. So now what happened was, your wife is now wondering, can't we do a 40-year loan? And you were told that no, you are not eligible for a 40-year loan. We don't have one. But even if we had, we would want that loan to be over before your age of retirement, and your employment letter shows that you retire at 60, so you can at best get a 30-year loan. That's fantastic. So you felt very happy. Well, when you were borrowing a 20-year loan, you were paying approximately, I need to say this from my books, is to you would have paid about 74 lakhs as interest, about 73 lakhs as interest. Now that you have shifted it from a 20-year loan to a 30-year loan, you are going to be paying about 1 crore 20 lakhs as interest. A small jump of 50 lakhs, which is the loan amount. So you are borrowed 50 lakhs and you will end up paying 1.21 crores as interest alone. So how much is the interest? Interest is about 2.5 times, approximately 2.5 times your loan amount. That's what happens. So what happens is also after some time you will start telling people, I bought this house for 72 lakhs and today it is worth about 1 crore 50 lakhs, right? So you're feeling damn kicked about it. But dear sir, please understand, you borrowed 50 lakhs from HDFC, and God bless your soul, I'm a shareholder, I'm very happy that you borrowed. And you will be paying 1 crore 20 lakhs as interest. So the cost of your house is not just 72, it is also to be included is the interest that you paid. I'm not talking of the principal, right? So your cost of your house is about 2 crores. It is not 72 lakhs which you thought it was, because 50 lakhs was funded by HDFC and 22 lakhs was funded by the opportunity loss that you must have had by having investment somewhere else. Maybe you sold shares, or maybe you broke fixed deposits. If you broke fixed deposits, you're not so badly off, but if you sold shares and then you find the market going up, then you feel, oh my God, I need not have done this transaction. But do you understand what exactly happened? Because you change the tenor from 20 years to 30 years, you're obviously paying much more interest, right? The interest component goes up. And the lender is very happy because he's still lending you the same amount of money. Of course, it is taking longer time for him to get it back, but that should not bother him at all, because he knows that he has got you as a customer for the next 30 years. And another funny thing happens, you don't actually stay borrowed for the whole period. After 7-8 years, you would find that you have very small amount left, even though you borrowed 50 lakhs. You repaid, your annual bonuses went for repayment, your wife got a bonus that went for repayment. Some uncle died, gave you 50,000 rupees, that went for repayment. So very quickly you had brought the loan down to a very manageable number. And after 8-9 years, you found that it was very easy to repay the lump sum. So you had that lump sum, you had some shares, you went and sold it. Though I think it's not a great decision, but people do take such decisions, saying, oh, I don't like a loan, so they repay the loan. They don't realize that if you've sold shares which are growing at 20%, to repay a loan which was at 7%, 8%, even at 10%, doesn't make any sense at all, especially if you're well off enough to be able to afford that loan. But that we should talk separately. So what has happened, you borrowed a lot of money and you have created an asset, so-called asset, which is not appreciating by the rate at which you are borrowing. So if you have borrowed money at 11% to buy an asset which is appreciating by 5%, it is a bad decision. Similarly, if you have borrowed money at 7% to buy an asset which is appreciating at 2%, again it's a bad decision, but it's an emotional decision. I want my house, mala माझी घर पाहिजे, or whatever reasons you bought. You have that house, you have that EMI, and that is going to hurt your retirement. How is it going to hurt your retirement? For a very long period of time, maybe for 8-10 years, you will concentrate all your effort on repaying the loan. You will not concentrate on investing. Now, during this 8-year period, it is perfectly possible that there are some equity portfolios which are given 21% return and you had borrowed money at 11%. Does it make any sense to repay the loan at 11%, repay the 11% loan, or does it make sense to keep the money in equity mutual funds? Well, you should have kept it in equity mutual funds for a longer period. Should you remove money from equity and repay home loans? Maybe not, but in a booming market, and if you have a very big home loan, yes, it makes sense. But if it's a comfortable home loan where you're paying the EMI very comfortably, it's not a very sensible thing to do. But yes, people do it regularly all the time. Without even considering why they borrowed, why they could not have stayed on rent. None of these considerations come up. I have a very simple thing to say, that to sit down and think, why are you taking a loan? Why are you borrowing to buy a house? Why are you borrowing cash, which is perhaps an appreciating asset, to buy a brick, steel and cement, which are depreciating assets. Ask these questions. Fairly obvious, ask these questions, because when you're taking a term loan, you're not just taking a term loan, you're also taking risk. What happens to you? What happens if you go into a coma and you're unable to repay the loan, right? So what happens if you die? Okay, for death we have a simple thing called term insurance. So you take a term insurance. The minute you took a loan of 50 lakhs to buy a house for 30 years, you have to step in and take a loan, take a term insurance of at least 50 lakhs over and above what you already have. So you and your family thought you needed an insurance of about 1.5 crores. You took a 1.5 crore term insurance. Now that you have a 50 lakh home loan, go and take a term loan exactly for the same tenor, and for heaven's sake payable on a quarterly or a 6-monthly basis. Because at some stage after 8 years, if you repay the loan, you may not need the insurance. But typically what happens is by the 8th or 9th year, people are very confident that they can repay, so they repay the loan. And believe it or not, within 6 months, there is a family itch for saying, oh God, this 1 BHK is not enough, we need a 2 BHK. And if you have a 2 BHK, suddenly that 2 BHK is not enough, you need a 3 BHK. So there is again a hunt for a house, and you suddenly find that, yeah, one more house is available. The current house will sell for about 2.5 crores or 2 crores. Then you need to add another room to it, or maybe 2 crores is an exaggeration. Maybe your house is worth the same house which you bought for 72 lakhs, or so-called thought you bought for 72 lakhs. You have repaid a big part of the loan, 7-8 years. It is worth about 1.5 crores. So now you want to sell that 1.5 crore house and buy a 2.25 crore house. And what will you do? 75 lakhs you will borrow. And you're very confident, because if you could 8 years back, if you could borrow 50 lakhs, you can always borrow 75 lakhs now. That is very small amount compared to what your repayment capacity is. Husband and wife both are earning. You have one kid. You have planned not to have any more children. So it's all hunky dory. So you're happy to borrow 75 lakhs. Again, you go back to HDFC and say you want to borrow 75 lakhs for 30 years, but they say, sorry sir, now you're not eligible for 30 years. Now you're eligible only for 20 years. Or 25 years. So you look at it and say, okay, I'll borrow for 25 years because your wife is younger, and you take the loan in her name. So you're just the support that she needs to borrow. So what has happened? Again you're borrowing. Again you are going to buy a bigger house, and you are going to hurt your retirement corpus. That is what my talk is about, saying don't buy assets which are not appreciating, and they're borrowing at rates which are greater than the rate of appreciation. So if you are sure that your housing is going to appreciate by 12%, and then I don't mind you borrowing at 9%. But if you're going to borrow at 7% and you buy an asset which is going to appreciate by 2%, well, you're losing money. So let me let you in on a secret. The BFSI or the NBFCs are run by extremely intelligent people. They could have been astrophysicists, they could have been a nuclear physicist, they could have been a top surgeon, but they chose to be in financial services. If they knew by some magic that real estate appreciation will be greater than the rate at which they are lending money to you, they would have created a whole culture of saying you should not buy a house, you should live on rent. Because for them the asset value is going up, because they can give it to you on rent, and then to your brother on rent, then break down the whole thing and rebuild and give it to your son on rent. So permanently they would have kept you on rent, because the property is appreciating at a rate greater than the rate at which their cost of funds, they get funds. If they get funds at 7% and real estate is appreciating at 11%, they would have convinced you that you should live in a rented flat for all your life. Unfortunately, they are able to get money at 7%, and they find that real estate is not appreciating at all, or maybe it is appreciating at 2, 3, 4%, and definitely not at 7% over long periods of time. Therefore, this brilliant subterfuge of saying let us borrow when you're young and buy a big house, etc., etc. So the country at least is full of houses which people have bought for use, but they are not using. They are afraid to give it on rent, so it's lying locked. Who's paying for it? You are paying for it. Whom are you paying? HDFC. God bless your soul. I'm a shareholder of HDFC. So I'm very happy that you're doing this. Do you realize that by buying a house or by buying any real estate which you are going to keep unoccupied and unused for long periods of time, whom are you hurting? You're hurting your retirement corpus. You have handed over the fun of compounding and the benefits of compounding from your balance sheet to the balance sheet of HDFC Limited, and I am very happy, like I said. So should you be, because I would think it is better to buy shares of HDFC Limited than to use their product. I've never taken a home loan from HDFC Limited, but I've been a shareholder for the last 20, 30, 40 years, whatever. 1979 or 1980, I bought the share for the first time, right? So that's the story of buying a bigger house or buying a house so big that you hurt your retirement corpus formation. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Thank you.